Welcome to the Andy Social Podcast. My name is Andy, and welcome back for another week of podcasting. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, thank you for giving it a shot, and hopefully you'll go back and listen to some of the previous episodes. Lots of different people from all walks of life, lots of musos, lots of professors, TV hosts, pilots, pirates, and blah, blah, heaps of different people. So definitely go back and have a listen to some of the different people from months gone by, weeks gone by, etc. This week, I'll dive right into it, is with Rando. Now, Lewis is currently playing in the Perth band Depravity, who we played with over at the Hamasonic Festival in Jakarta, Indonesia, which was literally last weekend. A week ago, I was getting ready to fly to Jakarta. So this is as close to a live anti-social podcast as you can get. Lewis has been playing drums and has been an active part of, I guess, the Perth metal scene, but I would just say it's the Australian metal scene for 10 plus years. And I've known Lewis for, what is it, about 11 years now. And I've always seen him as the ultimate session musician. He's always playing with different people. He's filling in, he's doing recordings with different bands, not just in Australia, not just Perth, but internationally as well. And he's really sort of become a really well-known and world-class drummer because of, I guess, the hard work he's put in over the years. And this is a really cool chat with Lewis because he's such a humble guy, and even like sort of teeing up this chat, and he's like, oh man, you know, I don't know if I've got enough things to talk about, or I think I can only talk about metal. And it was just really cool to actually have a chat to him over the phone and just start to dig in a little bit deeper about his earlier beginnings and what got him into playing, and that point in time where he discovered metal and what that was and what it felt like, and just and his outlook on everything. I mean, he's a guy that's just no mess, no fuss. He is not after the big sort of shiny, amazing gear and whatnot. He just makes do with what he has. And he's achieved so much, and I think in a way he doesn't even realize what he's achieved. So it's a bit of outside perspective looking at what he's done. So hopefully he'll listen back to this. Hi, Lewis, and maybe get a bit of different perspective of everything that he's been a part of over these years. Lewis has played with so many bands. I think for me, the band that I best know him for is the Furor, which is his baby project that he's been a part of, and he's created. It's his brain. He's the brainchild behind it. He's been a part of for so many years, but he's played with so many bands over the last decade plus. And Nerve Cell from Dubai, Impiety from Singapore, Depravity now, who played at Hamasonic, and it's just really cool to get a little bit more of an understanding and just, I guess, scrape the surface. As I said, I was digging deep, but we could have talked for hours, and this is really, really cool. So I'll leave it at that. I'm going to put all the links and whatnot in the show notes over at andysocial.net. So if you want to check out Impiety, The Furor, Depravity, or any of the other projects that he's been a part of, and also his contact details as well, I really encourage you to check out what Lewis is doing and reach out to him. If you're in the Perth area and you're looking for drum lessons, as you'll hear in this episode, Lewis has just started getting into the whole teaching aspect and whatnot. So I would definitely be taking advantage of that before it gets a bit too hard to get a hold of him. So everything's over at andysocial.net or andydowling.net. So you can go and click on those links and click on the show notes, and I'll have everything there. Then you can reach out to him and everything that he's a part of. But so much good music, especially if you love metal. But even if you don't like metal, and I probably should have said this earlier in the intro, but even if you don't like metal, I really encourage you to listen to this, because there's lots of really cool, interesting perspectives and takeaways from this. Things that I think of, such as just making the most of what you've got, not being distracted by complexity and trying to strive for absolute perfection. There's a lot of really cool motivating things in there, and just different perspectives and things that he's learned over the years, and things that he's only just sort of realized in the last few years as well. Anyway, I was trying not to carry on, but here I am. So enough of this. Let's get into it. Enjoy this conversation with Lewis Rando. I'm gonna start from the start as far as what I know of you and when I first met you. And I don't know if you remember, but it was it's over 10 years ago now. You guys, well, you were touring with Pathogen at the time, and you came over to Sydney. Yeah,
I remember we were in frickin' that. Where were we? It was in Newcastle.
Yep, that's it. And
you weighed a pounder.
I don't remember that, but I'm glad that memory is etched in your mind forever. That's I'm quite chuffed that.
Yeah, you just stacked it up and just inhaled it. It was cool. Totally badass.
There you go. That meets my or fits in with my reputation that I hold. So there you go. It just confirms everything. So all the deniers out there, Lewis has just shattered the haters out there. So yeah, pounder. I'm all over it.
I don't know how many patties it was.
I don't know. It was crazy.
Enough.
But you were touring with Pathogen at the time, but I remember that you were talking to me about, the Furor was also touring at the same time because you guys were about to do Metal Stock.
Yeah, that's right. The two of us went over and we did, I think, like 4 or 5 gigs.
Yeah.
And that Newcastle one was the second last one, I think. And yeah, that's when I met you for the first time.
Yeah, I still have this laminated piece of paper, like the Furor, one of the album covers, and you guys signed it. And I've still got that sitting around somewhere. I'll have to take a photo and I'll put it online so people can see it. Because I keep carrying it around from house to house, and every time I unpack bags or boxes and whatnot, I find this laminated album cover with your signatures on it. So I always laugh when I see it.
Laminated? Wow, that's pro. I don't remember any of that, but probably true. I'm sure it's true. Sure, you wouldn't lie to us.
No, well, I'll post it online so everyone can see for sure. But it's always this lasting memory. Every time I see the Furor mentioned anywhere, I always think of that laminated piece of paper. So there you go.
Well, hold on to it because we'll be famous one day. Yeah.
You remember the pounder. I remember the laminated piece of paper. So we hold pretty important memories.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah, it was. McDonald's was the only thing open around the corner, and there was an incident in that McDonald's. Someone went back there later on, came back to our hotel room saying that there was blood everywhere and someone had been stabbed in there or something. There was some old, yeah. And I was like, oh shit, well that's weird. Yeah.
You have a much
rough
better
town.
Yeah, Newcastle's got its moments, that's for sure. But you definitely have a better memory than I do. Jeez, that was definitely a hazy night though, and I think at least for you and some of the other guys that were playing that night, I think you guys had a bit of a head start when it came to sobriety. I think the rest of us had been drinking for most of the day, so by the time we were sort of chatting after the gig, we were well and truly sloshed. So yeah,
I didn't drink in those days really. I didn't start heavy drinking until a few years ago. You know?
Right.
Well, not properly. You know, I was always pretty sober playing in Furor, and all for gigs I'm usually sober. I can't play what I do drunk or anything. But I guess a late starter in that department. I was always quite disciplined.
Well, when it comes to playing drums, I mean, when you talk about rhythm and time, you can't really afford to be having anything in your system because, I mean, it doesn't take much to throw you off beat. And I mean, what you've been doing over the years, I guess it probably makes sense that you're a bit of a late start with the alcohol, which I think is probably an amazing thing. It's a great thing as opposed to the rest of us who just have been sucking on it like a teat for years.
Yeah, it's not fun to try and play when you're hammered. You just can't do it. It's just good I go out to gigs and I have a few drinks and watch bands, and that's awesome. It's great. I love it. But for mixing with music, I can't write music well if I'm drinking. All I want to do is write punk and just crusty, nasty kind of garbage, right? Which is what alcohol's good for, but not for thinking and coming up with wonderful, melodious and future thinking kind of riffs. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've always seen you over the years, and it's been over 10 years now, and you keep popping up here and there along the way. I see you as this multi-talented, extreme, and I'm not going to say extreme metal, but just this extreme version of a session musician. Like you're you've got your finger in every pot that you can possibly stick your finger in, and you're just constantly working nonstop. And it's either, working on your baby projects, the ones that, are close to you, or you're filling in and doing session work for so many different people. I guess the question that I've got off the back of that is, do you know off the top of your head how many releases that you've played on?
It's about, I can't off the top of my head, no, but it's about like 10 or 11 albums and a bunch of EPs and some live stuff, bootlegs that were released through Impiety. It's about like 12 albums or something. Yeah. I've done my Australian bands, and I've done some recordings for bands overseas, just EPs usually, an album, about 5 or 6 EPs, bits and pieces along the way. Trying to do more of that. I don't want to play with a million bands. It just kind of happened that way. I just can't say no. I've got a weak willpower, and I like to play a lot. So, and I got a lot of friends. So, like, people ask me to play for them or do their thing. I'll always say, yeah, sure, no worries, let's go for it. And then find myself getting a little bit buried in the workload and end up with 5 bands on my hands, and I don't know what to do with. But yeah, no, it's cool. I would just like to play, and as a drummer, everyone is short of a drummer, it seems, so it's pretty easy to get moving, especially in Perth. There's not heaps of drummers, I suppose, and yeah, I'm kind of the go-to guy, I guess you'd say.
It's one of those things. You nailed it on the head. You've got 2 things going for you. I mean, depending on if you're a glass half full kind of guy, you're a drummer, and everybody needs a drummer. Everyone's constantly looking for a drummer. Even for us, it took us 2 years to find a permanent drummer. It was just constantly going from session to session, just trying to find somebody that could get through a set to play live. And it was just so hard to find people out there. And then the second thing is, you being based in Perth, it's even harder as opposed to somebody being in Melbourne or Sydney, in a larger city. You guys are so isolated. And yep. I guess if you're really happy about getting all the work and all that sort of, attention as a drummer, then it's probably the perfect combination of playing that particular instrument and also being in Perth.
Yeah, I love doing it. Like, it's hard. Like, I love to play a lot. I just, like, if I had it my way, I'd friggin' be living in Europe and doing 6 shows a week or something, and who knows, that might happen in future. But I like to just keep busy, and the cool way to do that is just to have, 4 bands around you, so there's always one active. So I'll often play every weekend, or, maybe even twice a week, or sometimes even 3 times a night. I've done that before with different bands, and just a way of just keeping myself busy while I live out here in the desert in Perth, but yeah, I've since scaled it back a little bit because, there's a lot of things going on, and now I kind of want to just push one thing, and just basically I just want to go overseas and play with one band and get it on some cool gigs, and it's pretty hard to do that when you've got other bands on the side because you're letting people down, and it can kind of get in the way, and time management becomes everything. Like, I'm constantly trying to figure out who's doing what and what days I'm free and all that. So that becomes a bit of a pain in the ass. But yeah, it's good when there's gigs on. Like, I'm always involved, and I always get to get up and play, and always different styles. Like, some are more rocky, thrashy, and some are black metal, and some are death metal, and whatever. And keeps me entertained. I think I have a short attention span. So I just like to just juggle it up a lot like that, yeah. And I've been doing a bit of teaching lately as well, putting myself out there as a teacher, trying to make some money out of that, and trying to fill in some time, trying to get something back from drumming. I'm always spending money on bands and things, so it's good to just pass on the knowledge and teach a little bit and do that.
I'll have to pick your brain a bit about the whole sort of teaching, and obviously doing a lot of work for other bands and whatnot, because I'm quite intrigued by people that are sort of immersing themselves completely in music. Like, there's a lot of guys out there, and I'm one of them. I'll put my hand up, where you're doing it with a balance of everything else, where you might have a day job, or you might have something else where it's your main source of income that you're trying to keep afloat, and then the music sort of you fill in the gaps where possible. And it almost, I mean, I wouldn't say I've got to this extreme yet, but it's almost like you're the weekend warrior musician where you're only playing on weekends and that's your hobby. And I'm always fascinated and intrigued by people that are just saying, you know what, like I'm in 100%. I'll do whatever it takes. And as you said, you got 4 bands, and your whole theory behind 4 bands is that you've always got something going on. For most people, that'd scare the shit out of them. So, I mean, I think that's amazing that you've got that sort of mentality where you just got to keep yourself active, but doing things that you love doing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but it comes at a cost though. Like I've been in and out of jobs, and I've kind of always was asking for time off and pushing the limits with work and things. And at the moment, I don't have a proper full-time job or at all, like, or even part-time job. I'm looking for work. But it's been a problem with work in the past. And having traveled, doing the travel thing with Impiety like I did up until about 3 years ago, I was constantly in and out of the country. So job work was really, really patchy. And I'm just still recovering from the fallout of that, trying to find, there's some things coming up later in the year, and I have to work that around the job that I am looking to get. Like, it's going to be tricky. But yeah, it's something that I don't want to compromise on, but you do at some point, I suppose. And so that's the hardest thing. Playing the music in 10 bands is easy, but trying to balance it with a normal lifestyle and have a weekly income to live in this super expensive city, that's the hard part.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think that the teaching aspect, I mean, you said you've only sort of just dipped your toe into this now. Do you think the teaching part could be one of the answers to start getting some steady money coming in, so you don't have to go down the path of just doing a mundane shit-kicking job to to get the money coming in?
Yeah, definitely. Just to be self-employed would be like a dream, like everyone's dream, and to have enough students to make it worthwhile and to make any kind of money out of it. For sure. It's a matter of building them up. I don't have many yet. I've only been actually probably advertising the last 2 weeks, and I've got a few lined up, like 4 lined up.
Cool.
But I'm going to just push the shit out of it because I'm finally at the age where I've realized, man, I might not be good for anything else. So I just better put all the eggs in one basket and push it. And yeah, I believe in it now. Like I was never big on teaching or instructing people, and I never felt like I had much to say. But now I'm kind of, well, maybe I do. And more proud. I think I've got more to it now than I didn't believe in myself previously. I hope to do a lot of it.
Was there any reason? I mean, I won't become this psychologist and sit down on a chair and start asking you a million deep questions. But is there any reason why you didn't, in particular, believe in yourself at all?
Because I've just always been into playing and performing, and I took some drum lessons when I first started in, I think it was 1993 or something, and they kind of bored me a bit. Like I remember going to my drum teacher, my first drum teacher. This was the first couple of weeks that I ever heard death metal. And I got some drum lessons, and I went into him, and I had the Morbid Angel Blessed of the Sick album and Slayer Seasons in the Abyss album. And I went in there and I showed him this stuff, and I said, man, can you show me how to play this? And he was completely dumbfounded. He was didn't really know what to say and didn't really know how to write it out. And he was just, and then he said, can I make a copy of this to show my other students? and yeah, that was funny, but I don't know, just the whole pace of it kind of bored me. I was a bit impatient with it, and I just I had the most fun just sitting by myself, just playing along to all my favorite crazy thrash metal stuff that I was listening to. And yeah, and then just got into bands, finally met people a few years later and started hanging out in pubs and everything, and that was obviously the best fun ever. Yeah. And then, but in time, I learned a lot more theory and picked up that sort of stuff and see the importance of it now, and I see the flaws in my own playing because of being so impatient when I was younger, filling in those gaps now, and yeah, it's just, but at the time when I was young, I wasn't really too much into it. I didn't see how it fit into the big picture of playing in a band.
It's one of those things. It's really. I mean, I had the same sort of I guess perspective on it where. I mean, I don't really class myself as a really good musician, but I've just sort of made do over the years by picking up bits and pieces as I go, and I leverage off people and sort of make the most of the situations that I'm in. But I don't really class myself as a great musician. But when you talk to your average Joe Blow that has never picked up an instrument in their life and they've never played anything, their view on what you do is incredible, and they think that you're an absolutely fantastic musician. So I think to be able to get to that point where you sort of can see your own experience and talent and whatnot, where you can potentially pass that on to other people. I mean, even for you, like what you've done as far as working with so many different musicians and touring overseas and seeing so many different places and whatnot, I think just that worldly rounded experience in so many different areas is so valuable for so many different people. So I think you could be onto something with the whole teaching thing. It could open up a fair few doors for you.
Yeah, definitely want to do it. Like, I guess if I've pushed through to this point and I have something to show, I suppose. Like, I'm not. It's funny. Like, a lot of people, they'll compliment you on what you do and stuff, but I was always the last person to get it. I'm always looking at the flaws and what was wrong with the gig and how it could have been better. I just focus on the negatives, and I suppose I don't look at the positives, which might be a bad thing, might be a good thing. Definitely keeps you striving to do things.
Well, you definitely don't want to be complacent about it. You don't, if you're just satisfied about something, then you never strive to do more. So I think it's that you just got to find that balance. You don't want to be on the negative side all the time, but it's good to be a little bit dissatisfied and criticize yourself when you've played a show and you go, oh, well, I definitely could have done better. And then you aim to do that little bit better on the next one. But yeah, it's a difficult thing. It's a bit of a tightrope when you're trying to balance between which end of the spectrum you fall on.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you want to always improve and be good. But then there's a point where there's no sense being too good, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It depends what the rest of the band's doing also. Or what style of music are you? Does it require you to be really good? Do you really need to use that bunch of skills for this kind of band? That's why I pulled back a little bit in areas. I thought I play guitar as well, and I do vocals, and I put myself into other things, and playing guitar has been completely useful. And it's made me tone back my drumming. I think I hear drumming from a guitar player's perspective more. But just play as many instruments as you can. Like, if I could do more, I would. If I had more time to learn more, I would. But, drumming's not everything, is what I'm saying. Or being a brilliant musician's not everything. It's about just gelling with the people that you're with and, making that kind of outfit work. Because the idea of brilliant musicianship it's a concept, but what's more real than that is the situation that you are in with your people, with your band, and their personalities and their attitudes, which is differing from case to case.
Well, there's definitely bands out there when you watch them play live, or even sometimes just listening to a recording, and you've got, 4 or 5 guys that are all trying to compete with each other to be, the center of attention, where everyone's trying to show off their chops and skills and whatnot, but they're not actually locking in together and playing the overall piece of music that they're trying to project out there. And they're all just, the egos are getting in the way. And some of the best bands out there are the guys who just pull back completely and just lock in, and they don't stand out whatsoever, but the band themselves as a collective completely stand out because they're working together as a team. But I think that's a big thing in a lot of bands, well, anywhere in the world, but especially, Australia, just because we see so many, local gigs, and you watch the guys get on stage, and you've got the shredders, and then they got the guys who have got this ridiculous drum set up, and they're just going crazy, and the mix is out of whack, and then you got the bass player who's doing something ridiculous, and the singer who's trying to sing over the top of everybody else, and everyone's just totally disjointed. So it's a good thing to be aware of, and not a lot of people have that awareness to sort of just really look around and see the people that they're playing with, and what's the objective, what's the goal here, like what do we actually want, what sort of music do we want to pump out, and all get on the same page.
That's the hardest thing to do, is to look at the overall sound of your band and say, okay, we're putting all this into it, but what is it like? I mean, how do other people see it? That's a cool thing, like listening to what other people have to say, or or just smoking a whole bunch of weed and then sitting back and listening to it and saying, from an outsider's perspective, what the hell is this? I find that's pretty interesting, pretty funny thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure like things like that where you're forcing yourself to sort of be a little bit disconnected from the whole thing, where you can get that perspective and look from an outsider's perspective, would be so valuable. But not many people actually will spend the time to do that. So yeah, I think you don't want to be too into your own thing, otherwise you just kind of you lose it, No, there's plenty of that out there, that's for sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned before about playing guitar and doing some vocals as well. What was the first instrument that you picked up when you were a kid?
Drums, for sure.
So drums was definitely the
drums.
Start. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
How old were you?
And then I was about 12 years old, 11 or 12 years old. This is just before I got into hard like metal. I think I was listening to Poison and Motley Crue and whatever was on Rage or video hits at the time in like the late 80s. And then around the early 90s, death metal hit me, and I fully got into that and kind of just jumped straight into that, like death metal and black metal.
Do you remember what the first sort of death metal song or album that you heard that sort of just blew your mind?
Yeah, it was Morbid Angel, Blessed Are the Sick. And yeah, there's a few, but that was the one I was listening to. I was like, what is this? It's the coolest thing ever. But I have no idea how they are doing that on the instruments. They sound like monsters and completely crazy, But I was totally hooked. I was, from the first time, I was right into it.
And was that a sibling or a friend or something like that exposed you to that?
It was a friend at school, yeah. A friend at first year high school. He was explaining it to me, like this monster music, like with growly vocals and everything, and death metal, and I thought, man, that sounds like really crazy. I was into horror movies, and I've always been a dreamer into like the weird kind of stuff. So that like appealed to me, and then he's lent me, Seasons in the Abyss and that Morbid Angel album, and I just flipped out.
I love it. I love that that point in time, and I think I'm similar as far as that age where I got And Justice for All by Metallica, and I got that on cassette, and I just couldn't even get my head around what the music was. I'd never heard, it was so foreign to me. I just could not grasp what I was listening to, and it took me a while, and then suddenly everything started to pop out, the riffs, well, not the bass, but the drums. And
Jason Furor.
But I can definitely appreciate that sort of that moment, that feeling where you just go, wow, like suddenly you feel the world just changes, everything changes completely. And so sorry, you were saying after that, so you started playing drums, and that sort of, you went from sort of the glam rock era to more extreme stuff, but did you pick up drums while you're still into the glam stuff, or was it when you got into sort of Morbid Angel and the extreme stuff that you picked up drums?
It was, in between. I started playing, because I was fully into Motley Crue before I discovered like death metal or anything. I was big into Motley Crue and Poison, Open Up and Say Ah, and Look What the Cat Dragged In. We had those on tape. Yeah. And that was really cool. That was awesome. And like Bon Jovi was all over video hits, and I used to listen to all kinds of music, like whatever was on at the time. It was Michael Jackson and CNC Music Factory, and MC Hammer was happening, and all this commercial pop that we were getting hit with as young kids. But it was always like the Bon Jovi and the Motley Crue that got me. And then from there, I heard death metal, and I went, oh, right, that's what I've been looking for, and stuck with that,
When you heard extreme metal and sort of Morbid Angel and all that, did you suddenly realize that whatever the hell you're playing at that time, like, you're playing, you've got some form of a drum kit at the time, did you realize that whatever you're using was just not sufficient for what the type of music that you were suddenly exposed to and that you started to love?
Not really, no. I always play with pretty crappy gear, and I still kind of cut on to shit I knew, double bass drum. I remember my There were two. I had a little drum kit, and my dad's old drum kit was lying around, so I used to steal the bass drum from his and cram it into mine, make a double bass kit. And then a few years later, I got a double bass kit. But I never had the best, flashiest gear. I used to just make do with what I had. My dad was a drummer, by the way, so there was always a drum kit lying around the house, and he showed me how to play quite a bit. He gave me a few lessons back in the early days, and I took it from there. But yeah, it was a different thing. Like what they're doing is crazy, and there wasn't too many videos around at the time. Like it wasn't easy to catch videos of them like it is now on YouTube or whatever. It was just a bit of a mysterious kind of form of music where this crazy stuff's going on, but no one knows who they are or how it's done, or you have to go to a show to see them. This is pre-internet and everything. So
did you just have to listen to the albums and just go by ear and just try and work it out, and then go to the kit and then just start hitting it out to try and get the right groove and the right timing and whatnot? Yeah.
Used to just try and play along to it and copy it. I knew what was going on, but I just couldn't play it. Like that speed was just definitely not there at the time, and I was doing a stupid version of it, obviously, but I could kind of, after a couple of years, comprehend what they were doing. It was just a matter of getting the reflexes up and the snap in the wrist, and that's still a work in progress. It's come along, but yeah, no, it's really cool. Metal rules.
I think when you said before about using sort of old crappy gear, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember seeing something online a few weeks ago or a couple of months ago where you'd had a kit for so long and you've been known sort of locally for having this kit, and you finally got rid of it after so many years. Was that sort of what it was?
Yeah, pretty much, because I spent all my money on touring. Like, I spent thousands on touring, so the last thing on my mind was, like, having a great drum kit that I can sit with in my little basement at home back at Perth. So I went out, I wanted to go out and see the world. Would go to Europe and play these amazing killer kits that was so much better than what I would ever have, and I'd come home to this piece of crap. You know? It wasn't bad. It was a Pearl Export double bass, and it was pretty good. But, yeah, it was workable. Like, it was a good workhorse. I used to play so many gigs with it, and I was constantly loading it through car parks, and it had been rained on, and it was just a good go drum kit. But yeah, I'm not a gearhead, and I'll put it that way. Like, I'm not really, really into it. Unless I can afford it, I'm not going to take interest in it, kind of thing. Like, there's definitely like higher levels of gear, lower levels of gear, but it's not something that has been my focus. I've always been into music and writing and playing and that kind of thing, and whatever left over energy I have, I would put into gear, which was not much, to tell you the truth.
With the drum kits, and I mean, this is from a sort of a guitarist bass player perspective, which is always going to be a little bit different, but I always see when we tour around and you get the local drummers or even our drummers that we've had over the years, and the need or the want or the desire to play with their own kit. Their own kit is just like the holy grail, and then whenever they've got to play someone else's kit, they get worried and scared and fearful because they're not used to it, and you know they're unsure as to how it's set up and the height and the adjustment and all this sort of shit. And for you to say that, all I'm thinking in the back of my head is, man, you must be so versatile, where obviously every kit's going to be different. You've got to adjust accordingly, but you must be so sort of versatile to be able to handle almost anything that gets thrown in front of you. And I think that would probably, I mean, and don't be humble here, but I'm assuming that would make you a much better drummer, because you can just hop in front of a kit no matter where you are in the world, and with a couple of tweaks or whatever, you're ready to go.
Yeah, I reckon a lot of it's in the mind. Like, people, I mean, you look at your kit and you think, oh, it's not my kit, and it's a foreign place and all this. But at first I'd freak out. I would freak out because I thought, you know, if everything's not perfect, it ain't going to work. And then I went to, like, toured Asia and did all these gigs in India and stuff, playing some weird, horrible gear at times. Like, and I realized I would still get through the gig. And then I realized, no, it's all inside of you. It's not the gear. It's not all that. It's not what you make it out to be. A lot of that's just fear and paranoia that you're projecting outwards into your equipment and everything. So I realized that I was kind of pulling it off well enough with whatever you had at the time, and a lot of it's just inside you, you know.
Yeah, when you mentioned touring around with, like, especially Asia with, you know, and coming across this really horrible gear, I spoke to Jason from Truth Corroded earlier in the year, and they were talking about when they played through Southeast Asia, and I think it was Vietnam or Thailand, and the drum kit, the drum stool was like welded to the floor.
Not surprising.
Yeah, it's this crazy setup. You've done a lot of touring through Asia and all over the shop, but what have you had any sort of horror stories as far as rocking up to a gig and then just discovering, oh my God, like what the hell is this that I've got to play?
Like, you know, just on the weekend on Hammer Sonic, I had to play on a drum kit with a broken skin. Like, the drummer before me put his beater through it, so we just smashed it up with gaffer tape, and it managed to hold for the gig. I could see it wearing through as I was playing. So in between songs, I'd ripped all this gaffer tape, so in between every song, I could throw another layer on that would keep me going until the end of the set. That, and no cymbal washers, no felts, drum stools that you can't, adjust or anything. Stuff that's just completely just out of tune and out of whack. But then you got to think about the audience as well. Like, that's what they're used to seeing. Like, if you go in there and you want to expect high, top-notch stuff and everything to be absolutely perfect, you kind of come across looking like a bit of a wanker, because they don't have a clue what it is you're trying to do. Because they're used to seeing every drummer just come through and play on this stuff, and you just got to think, well, that's okay. You want to have a high standard, but you don't want to sit there wasting time tinkering with the stuff and complaining to people for 2 hours. You just want to get on with the job and make it fun for them, and usually they completely love it anyway. So.
Well, I think it definitely highlights how good of a musician you can be if you can just adapt to whatever situation you're in. Like, I remember years and years ago, I was really keen on photography. I was always, this is before the whole digital sort of photography came in. I had the old school SLR with the film and whatnot. And I went to a few photography classes, and they used to always say, it's not the camera that you're using, it's the person behind the camera that makes the great shot. And with music, you've got these guys that have got this, they're absolutely gear hungry. They've got the most amazing gear and whatnot. And it's almost like a compensation for sometimes to mask the lack of ability that they have. And I've played heaps of shows where sound check is the most painful thing in the world, because guys are just sitting there trying to get the best tone or the best sound or whatever it might be. And they're playing in an absolute dive of a venue. And you think, man, for a punter that rocks up, who's probably had about 5 beers before they even walk in the venue, they don't give a fuck about your sound. And if anything, they wouldn't even be able to distinguish the difference in tones and what you've patched in and what you've done. And if you can play to the standard that you can, then the sound and all the gear and everything is sort of secondary. And it's quite interesting. And especially now, and I'll make this really current with the sort of stuff that's floating around the internet with the Faceless and their tour, and talking about relying on their laptop
Marshall's
and everything.
Thing, they need it. They need their gear exploded or something.
Yeah, and their laptop died or whatever, and then the stuff got stolen or whatever. But I always look at that and go, geez, man, just plug into an amp, and who cares if your sounds like shit? Get on stage and put on a show. Yeah, that's my thing. I'm not big into effects or backing tracks, or we're not a really complex band. What we do is pretty raw, pretty straightforward, and we just play in time, make sure your bass and your mids and your treble are okay, and that's about it. We're pretty simple like that. But big, huge touring band. I do admire that when you see bands with laptops by them. I think, what the hell? Well, that's crazy. That's cool. What is that? There's part of me that kind of wishes I had the patience for that. I was running click tracks and backing tracks up until recently, but I just kind of lost patience with it because of all the tinkering around, and it was taking me out of the whole band live room experience. Yeah.
So
I think
something I
I
prefer
think
to do
it's
without.
yeah, I think it's cool to have in certain situations. And I think, like for us, and I'll use us as an example, we've got backing tracks, and our drummer uses a click track, and it's all fed through DI into the PA. So we've got some backing sort of synths and whatnot in certain songs. But whenever we want, we can kill that and just play a set without any of that backing shit. And like Hammersonic, we just thought, you know what, it's a festival. We're barely going to get a line check, if anything at all. The sound's going to be pretty crap. We're going to expect the worst. So let's fuck off the backings. Let's get rid of all that technology and just plug into the amps and just play a set. And that's what we did. And so for us, we're always had that backup. And you know, when someone can't play us, like we've done shows where you know one of the guys in the band can't even play the show, and we either fill it in with somebody else or we just do it as a 3-piece and just, you know, crawl our way through the set. But you know, at least we're getting on stage and still trying to put on a show and trying to be entertaining. And I think it goes a long way to actually put that effort in, instead of just saying, you know what, we don't have that little piece of equipment or that little bit of gear, and now we can't play the show.
Yeah, I reckon it makes you look way cooler as a band to just be able to get up there and just do it at the drop of a hat. And yeah, that's the coolest guys always seem to do that. You know, guys, musicians who just pick up an instrument and blaze it. And it'd be cool to be one of them, you know. But yeah, different bands, there's different genres of music. Sometimes you're playing really, really colourful sci-fi metal that might need all that stuff, but I realized that wasn't what made our music good. It was a good bonus on top. Maybe we did all the synth and backing tracks because we had too much time on our hands, but take it away and I don't think it really affects the core of what we are as a band.
That's it. I mean, you can still just get up there and you play a set, and whoever's watching you can still say, well, that's what I expected to see. That's what I was hoping for, and I'm satisfied. I'm happy and entertained. So I think it's a big thing, and I think a lot of bands. I mean, technology is amazing. I mean, it's incredible to have so many amazing things at your fingertips, but as soon as you start relying on it, I mean, I think you're fucked. You lose the essence of what you're actually trying to do. And I think the whole point of playing music and being on stage is that there's that raw vulnerability of that anything can happen, and that you're exposed, and that you're at the mercy of your arms and your legs and your fingers and whatever doing the right thing at the right time. And if it fucks up, then that's part of the experience.
Yeah, just raw, straight, go for it. Yeah, and that's our kind of thing. But we rehearse hard and we get all the fundamentals down, and hopefully that should be enough. But it's really competitive these days. Like bands are, you know, the level's so high, and there's so many different ways of doing it with backing tracks and all that kind of stuff. It's just like, but I try to remember what our music is, and I try to remember what it is we want to do, and I don't want to pay too much attention to what's happening outside. It's good to learn from, but don't mistake yourself as that, and just, you know, find that balance, you know.
And I think that stuff I think that cuts through the crap after a while as well. Like, you know, other bands might have, you know, all this really fancy sort of technology and gear behind them, and it might be distracting in the short term and be quite exciting for your average sort of listener and, you know, punter and whatnot. But I think long term, the longevity of a band, I think if you can get your fundamentals in place and you don't have to rely on that sort of stuff, you might not get the initial sort of shock attention and you know, excitement from a fan base, but I think long term, I think you're the one that's still going to be standing later on down the track when a lot of these other bands sort of just give up, and they overcomplicate it themselves with too much technology. So I think there's a lot to be said with just really keeping it basic and just really focusing on the fundamentals and making sure you're really solid as a band. And then, you know, if you want to dab something on top of it, then go for it. But otherwise, I think if you just stick with the basics as a foundation, it can go a long way.
Yeah, I just love music. Like, I kind of come from a death metal and black metal background, so production doesn't mean ultimately doesn't mean that much for me. Like, I grew up listening to loving Dark Throne and Isengard and Burzum and all this wacky shit. And just because it was just playing, you know, you can hear what the guys are doing, but it doesn't sound that much different to having a microphone in a room capturing a band rehearsing. And that's something I can appreciate. And I think if you can't appreciate that, then it's strange, you know. I mean, we're all spoiled for production. Like, bands are spending tens of thousands of dollars on this production, and quite often, if it's not to that level, people will say, oh, it was bad production. And I'm like, well, yeah, maybe it only costs $1,000 or $500, but I mean, the guys, you know, playing through an amp is playing through an amp. Most drummers sound the same if you put them on a drum kit. There's, you know, behind all the gloss and all the illusion of production, it's much the same.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of pretty content with that.
I think it's a good way to look at it. I think it sort of slows you down and keeps you grounded in a way, but slows you down in a positive way, not a negative way. I think it's quite good, and it keeps you fresh and keeps you hungry for the long term. Yeah,
I reckon. Yeah, it's just, I guess, who I am. I don't think I'll change. I think I'm too old to change now.
I'll shift just a little bit. So, what was I mean, obviously, I'm assuming that when you started playing in bands and whatnot in Perth and sort of finding your place in the scene and trying to work yourself out as a drummer and a musician, what was the first opportunity to start working with some bands internationally?
That was in 2008. Nerve Cell from Dubai called me, and I toured with them in Australia like the previous year. We did a tour together. We did 6 shows or something. Got to know them on that tour. And they ran into some shit. The next year, the drummer couldn't do this big festival they had planned in Dubai. So they called me. They said, learn these songs in 3 weeks and we'll fly you over. And I was like, yes, wow, awesome. So went over to Dubai and played the Dubai Desert Rock Festival 2008, which was massive. It was about like 15,000, 20,000 people. It was like Hammersonic or something.
Yeah.
And that was awesome. And played that. And then later on in the year, they got me back to play another festival they had there, and a club show they had there. And then they kind of took me on as their session/full-time drummer for those few years. And for like 3 years or so, I was back and forth from Australia to Europe or India, Sri Lanka, Philippines, and Asia, wherever with them. And that was killer. Great band and good guys who were just putting everything on the line for it. Like, they spend all their money and they spend all their time and they work up and down, and they love what they do, and they totally die hard into it. Like, I see kind of their perception of what, you know, they're doing, and they're really just so into it. It's really cool to see and cool to be part of.
And it'd be different. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, that's the best thing about sort of heavy music and metal and whatnot, is that there's that like-minded approach where you both sort of can relate to each other, as far as, you know, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you've got that sort of common connection. But were there certain things that those guys sort of had to experience living in that part of the world that was just so different and unexpected from your point of view?
Yeah, like, I mean, they're from Dubai in the Middle East, and there's a lot of, not strange, but different to where we live here in Perth. Like, they don't really have a local scene that they can fully get into. Like, they don't have pubs and clubs playing metal every week or every second week or whatever, and, you know, bands touring through there at all. So their only hope is to get out of there. So they had really worldly because of that. Their idea of playing a gig is booking a tour and going to another country. That's just what they do, because there's just not much else to do in their town, in their city.
That's quite cool. I mean, imagine that for Australian bands, where it's like, well, there's not much of a scene in Australia, but we'll just start playing, in New Zealand or Southeast Asia whenever we need to play some shows. I mean, bands are doing that already anyway. But as far as your as far as your local shows are concerned, if that was your first stepping stone, I think it'd be very different. So, man, like I can't. Sorry, go.
They just go for it, yeah. Like, as a first step, they're like, I think, they played a few shows in Dubai, previous Desert Rock Fest, but it's one of the third steps they made was coming to Australia and doing 5 shows here, and then doing Europe constantly, and just always online, talking to people internationally, and trying to get themselves around and find the money for it and making it happen.
That's cool. And I mean, doing that stuff with them, did that sort of open the doors up for you as far as being recognized as a drummer for other bands to sort of go, well, we might hit you up and see if you're interested in doing some session stuff with us?
Yeah. A lot of that's come from people bands that we've played with along the way, like bands that were supporting Impiety or playing with Nerve Cell or whatever. And yeah, definitely, I guess it helps a little bit. I guess they hear about it through someone who might have heard you playing in that band. But playing internationally really, really helps. Like one international show is like doing 50 local shows. You know, like as soon as you go over there and you do your gig, everyone thinks it's a huge deal, and you come back and you got a trillion friends requests, and your inbox is full of things and people you think you're something you're not or whatever. But it just works like that. Like if you can get out there and bridge that gap, you get a lot of attention on yourself.
What was it like playing with Impiety? Are you still an official member of them, or were you ever an official member, or just always a session guy?
I think I'm pretty official now. I think so. I hope so. Yeah, but they've had like so many members. They've had like 20 members over the years.
Yeah,
and changed to a whole lot. And I could see that. So I sent the Shaitan a message saying, I want to be the next guy. Like kind of when this drummer leaves or whatever, I want to be the next guy because I live in Perth and I'm kind of close to Singapore, I suppose, because he's going to Mexico and Japan and all Europe and whatever. So I said, I'd like to give it a go. I got experience. And then he was right onto it, and I showed him a video and he was really keen on that. And I've been a full Impiety fan for freaking ages, since like 1998. I've been like, every album that comes out, I check it out, and it constantly blows me away. I've been really headlong into it. And so to have him, like hanging out with him and having him go to Singapore and hang out with him was like just meeting my idol. That was the coolest thing ever. Like it really, that was a huge step, for me.
That
cool. Was cool.
What's sorry, go.
Yeah, it's just an all-around great band. Might not be the biggest band, but around Asia, they're really well respected and feel pretty comfortable doing that one.
They're one of those bands that, like for us going through Southeast Asia, and we're definitely not an extreme metal band, but when we talk to like just metal fans and talk about, who are some of the good bands or the bands that are doing really great things in this sort of region, and they are they're always in conversation. They've got such a legacy and such a notoriety in Southeast Asia in general. It's incredible. And initially, like, I had no idea who they were. I'm like, who? And then after a while, I've got a few CDs of theirs, and I was just like, oh man, this is really, really good stuff. And then I was almost like, converted into what this big thing is with this band. It's just really, really cool. But what's from your point of view, as being, an Aussie playing in Perth for years and growing up in Perth and playing with, locals and bands and whatnot, Nerve Cell's one thing because you've gone over there to do a lot of live stuff with them, but for Impiety, where you've become like this permanent member of the band where you've got to interact with them quite a bit. It's, not just playing live, but just sort of going through every process of what a band goes through. Were there any big distinctive differences between sort of, doing it in Perth and doing it in Singapore, or is it more or less the same thing overall?
Impiety rarely play in Singapore. The thing is that he's played about 3 gigs in Singapore in the last 27 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah. First gig I ever played was Penang, and it was sold out. It was like 800 people. And he just, kind of like Nerve Cell, he just goes out there and just looks to go elsewhere.
Yeah.
But not really so much Singapore. We played a show in Singapore in 2011, and it was about 60 people. It wasn't huge. But there were some pretty old people there who were right into it. But Impiety is one of those bands that can just go anywhere. like, Mexico. They pull people. They can go to throughout America, pull people, Canada, Europe. People know who they are.
That's incredible. You've played in Bangladesh, haven't you?
Yeah, we played in Dhaka a few years ago. That's where Christian recently didn't get into.
Well, I was just going to say, I'll make it current again because I just saw the headlines the other day where they've been barred or detained because of religious blasphemy or something along those lines. Them and Nervo Chaos. So it's pretty crazy. But I mean, I've never been to Bangladesh before, but to go there as a metal band, I mean, what's that like?
Yeah, it was really awesome. It was kind of like any other gig. It was just a lot of fun, a lot of people. We played at a movie theater. It was like an old movie theater that was like people sitting up in the, chairs like that. And, yeah, it's a cool venue and pretty diehard support. We played with all local bands. Orator, who were really, really good. Farman and shit, man, I can't remember right now, but they were good bands, and like it was a good turnout. It was 150 or 200 people, pretty full room. But this Christian thing, I don't think it was blasphemy. I think it's a bit overblown. I think there was just a problem with the visa and entry. Yeah, I think that's a good way to kind of just get some hits on your website or whatever. Like it was a bit of a headline.
Oh, good on them if the band created the hype themselves, because I mean, I was one of those idiots that just read the headline and kept scrolling and went, oh, shit, that sounds bad. But if in hindsight, if I got detained and I was playing in a more extreme metal band, I probably would be sending out press releases to people as well saying blasphemy. I mean, it's great publicity. Yeah.
No, they're pretty extreme there. Like, there's been terrorism going on in Bangladesh recently, and it's pretty religious, and there's some pretty strong views and things, but I don't know exactly the case. Who knows? But it could have been just as easy, just a confusion with the visas or whatever, or who knows. But we went there and played with all these headbanging maniacs and drinking beers and having a great time.
It's interesting in just Asia in general, because a lot of these countries have got massive populations of heavily religious people, but at the same time, if you look at where extreme metal is, where it's most popular is all in these regions as well. It's almost like people, I guess, are so mentally repressed with religion that they've got to repel or rebel and go in an opposite direction. And probably the most opposite way of doing that is to embrace stuff like metal and whatnot, and really sort of let out their aggression that way. And that's probably why it's so popular. But I mean, for you, doing a lot of touring sort of all through that area, I got a glimpse of it being in Jakarta on the weekend for Hammer Sonic, but I mean, you would have seen a lot of it over the years. And what's your sort of take on it all? With people are always reluctant to go on tour in these regions because they feel like they're going to get in trouble or this a blasphemy thing or whatever. I mean, we got pulled up by the religious police in Singapore because our name was Lord. So they were heaps sus on us. And,
oh, really?
Yeah. So they knocked on the promoter's door in Singapore and started asking for papers and all sorts of information. They wanted all of our lyrics and whatnot.
Were you the right Lord or you were the wrong Lord?
That's it, yeah. But I talk to a lot of people that haven't toured in Asia at all. And I guess it's that old school closed-minded approach. Until you actually experience it, everyone's like, oh, well, it sounds really scary and it sounds really worrying. But I mean, for you that's done it for so many years, and I mean, you've got so many connections over there with bands and fans and whatnot. What's your take on it all?
I think the people do rebel a little bit. Like, the people are right into it. Like, when they talk about anti-religious stuff, it means a whole lot. And to the people, that's like, oh yeah, and they just go crazy for it, and they're pretty extreme, and they dress extreme. Like around Malaysia, they all make every effort to be wearing gauntlets and bullet belts and leather jackets, and they really put on a show the way they look. And maybe that's got something to do with just like sticking a middle finger up at the authorities. But a lot of tanning, like a lot of black metal, a lot of really harsh kind of stuff over there, which I suppose has a lot to do with them getting religion pushed in the face on a daily basis. So when, bands carry on about, crushing the Jehovah, whatever, they it means something to them, carries a bit more weight. Like, whereas in Australia, grindcore's huge. Parties, fun bands, drinking beer, and whereas black metal and all this talk of, crushing all this, whatever, is not such a thing. It doesn't really gain traction.
It's definitely, it's interesting, and I guess that's probably why Asia, and when you look at places like Eastern Europe, where you've had populations of people that have been repressed for so many years for different reasons, political, religious, and whatnot, and they've been forced to sort of follow a particular path and whatnot. And sometimes it can be very cheesy, but metal music has been sort of this outlet for so many people. I mean, in Asia, extreme metal's been that real sort of outlet for so many people, and it makes sense to them. And it, as you said, like a lot of context behind either the lyrical content or just the music and what it means, and that whole philosophy behind some of these bands has got so much meaning and passion behind it. And then if you look at Eastern Europe, bands that, like the really successful bands, are like Manowar. Like Manowar are gods in Eastern Europe, but it's sort of like this united we stand sort of, Wimps and Posers leave the hall sort of stuff. But it's this escapism for so many people that have been repressed for so many years. So it's kind of cool in a way, and it's interesting to see how people take it in, because as you said, like in Australia, we're so laid back, it's not funny. And there are some bands that do,
for sure.
And there are some bands that do political sort of stuff, but overall most bands are out there to have a good time, and beer's massive in our culture, or just drinking in general, and that's sort of where we are. And the US is sort of like that. A lot of the Western countries are like that, but a lot of these other places, man, like metal's like, it's just, it almost has like that much more importance than it does in the Western world. And I think it's probably quite underrated the way we look at it.
Yeah, it's like a battle cry for people. Like, I look at the metal scene like here as kind of just being like the pub rock scene, like in the 80s, whatever I missed out on, which is just people going out, having a good time, meeting mates, drinking beers, running amok, just banging their heads. There's not a lot of controversy to it. I mean, the thing that people might worry about most is people are drinking too much and getting rowdy, but the fact that they let us drink is fucking really cool, because they don't do that in so many other countries, in like Asia and things. That's the funny thing about Asia. You go to these gigs and they don't drink alcohol. Like, it's impossible to find a beer. Like, it just doesn't cross their mind. They all go to a show and they're attentive and they watch and they completely enjoy it for what it is, and really appreciate it, and really, really high level of respect over there. They know which band they're watching and they pay attention, and then they'll come up to you afterwards and talk about the show. Whereas here, you might see just people scattered after the show and booze fest or whatever, which is also cool. That's the way we do things. But
it's just different, isn't it?
Yeah, just the differences. Like, people over there, but they collect a lot over there as well. They're right into it. Like, there's people who have, who hoard merchandise of bands, and people come to shows with fucking all their merchandise to sign and everything. And they're right into it. You can't say they're into it any less than us. Or, I think, I don't know. Just I think we've got a longer history of it, but they'll definitely go way into the future with it.
It's interesting to see how it will play out when, especially in areas of the world where it really needs it. I mean, I'm waiting with anxious breath for when metal really, really kicks into Africa, because there are parts of Africa where there are metal fans and whatnot, and there are some South African metal bands, and I think there are some bands in Africa, but overall, it's such an untapped resource. And once a lot of these sort of countries start to get more exposed, especially with the digital age and getting more connected and whatnot to the internet, and being able to communicate a lot more with the rest of the world, man, like, I can't wait to see what happens when, especially just music in general, but especially metal, starts to really infiltrate a lot of these parts of the world, because it's just going to open up the minds of so many people, and it's going to give people an outlet to really sort of think outside the box, and even at a basic level, just to get their aggression out in a healthier way than potentially what they've been doing prior.
Yeah, for sure. I think Flesh God Apocalypse and Nerve Cell played in Cape Town in Africa. Yeah. Flesh God Apocalypse definitely played there. And I was like, whoa, that's awesome. But I'm in contact with a couple of guys from Africa who send me mail, and I've sent them CDs and stuff. I would love to do it, like, full on, like Johannesburg, and Jesus Christ, man, it would be a trip. It'd be awesome. But I think there's something universal about metal that you can't ignore forever.
That's it. There's something genuine about it, as opposed to, I mean, I think it's with other styles of music, but metal itself is just, there's something very unique about it that's just so genuine, and it connects so many people. I mean, you don't even speak the same language, and you could have the same sort of similar style of t-shirt on, and suddenly you're linked in arms. And I mean, it sounds so cheesy, but it really does bring a lot of people together.
Yeah, it's true. Like, you walk around a metal fest in another country, and not to generalize, but you can tell what people are by looking at their shirt.
Yeah.
Like, you look at what they're into and you think, oh, you're a Manowar kind of guy, eh? Or you're a Devoured kind of guy, hey? Or you're more of a Darkthrone kind of guy. And it's cool, and you just strike up these bizarre conversations about just what shirts you're wearing even, and that never happens anywhere. But you all know there's something to it, you know. You've all got a history with the music and come together on it.
That's pretty cool. All right, well, I'm keeping an eye on the time. I'm going to wrap it up with one quick last question for you. So you're talking at the start about sort of what you want to do in the future. You're talking about, you just started in the last few weeks branching out and doing teaching and lessons and whatnot, but also you mentioned sort of in passing about, touring and playing overseas as well. What are the next few years hold for you? What do you want to do, or what do you expect to do?
I want to play as much as possible and tour as much as possible with the life that I have left. I'm 38 years old now, and
you're so old.
You're so old. I don't know, but I look at this. I mean, how many brutal death drums do you see getting old? I don't know. I'll push it till I'm 50, 55, whatever. But I'm really itchy to get out there and play and see the world, play to people. It's just a matter of strategizing, trying to find a way to do it, and maybe toning the bands down a little bit, trying to keep it to 2 bands and get them going in the right directions. Got some stuff planned for Impiety at the end of this year and next year. And this band I'm playing in now, Depravity, this death metal band here in Perth, I'm going to push that, and all the guys are right on the same page. It's like a connection that I haven't had in a while, so we want to push that. And teach some drums and trying to get something out of that and push my agenda through that. And, just trying to make the most out of it. I haven't really changed my mind in 20 years. I'm still keen to do what I've been doing, just, fighting the boss man and trying to make it happen.
It's pretty cool. I'm excited to see what you do over the next few years, because it's, as I said, I'm always fascinated with people that just dive in and just throw everything they can at it. And I think the teaching part is going to open up a whole new array of doors for you, and it's exciting to see what the future will hold.
Yeah, a lot of it's social networking. I really get my head around the marketing aspect and how to bring the people in. And I mean, locally, there's people out there, definitely heaps of kids to teach, and just got to tap into that market. But yeah, keen as hell. Sounds
good. All right, man. I'll let you go. Thank you so much. And
thanks for having us on. Yeah, it was cool. Good to see you on the weekend as well. That was awesome. Good set too. That creeping death was awesome.
Thanks, man. And I'm just bummed that I missed you guys. I didn't realize you guys played so early in the morning, and but I'm glad that you got through it despite the drum issue.
Yeah, we got through it. We played like an hour and a half after we were scheduled to play, but I don't know how that works, but it worked out. Yeah, but it was good. We just got to hang out for the day, and we got the best part of the day to watch bands, so it was cool.
It was an awesome day, and plenty of Diablos, and I certainly felt it. The next day.
Diabolic day. Yeah, it was funny. I was just feeling flat for 2 days afterwards. The ride home was just pretty boring.
Oh yeah, absolutely. All right, man. Well, take care, and we'll speak soon.
No worries. Thanks a lot, eh?
Yeah, no worries. All right, see you, man. Bye-bye.
All right, catch ya.
Bye. Thanks, everyone. Hope you enjoyed that chat with Lewis. If you want to reach out to him and or check out all the bands that he's been a part of, head over to andysocial.net or andydowling.net and you'll find all the show notes in there, all the links and resources and things that we spoke about. If you're curious about some of the bands that we mentioned, I'll put links in there, maybe a few YouTube videos as well, so you can check out some stuff visually as well as audibly. Straight off the bat, I guess the most current project that Lewis is involved with is Depravity. The best way to check them out is you can go to their Bandcamp page, which is depravityaustralia.bandcamp.com, I believe. So that's Depravity, DEPRAVITY. That's the best way to check out Depravity. As I said, we played with them in Jakarta at the Hammersonic Festival, and they played at the crack of dawn. They played too early, so I missed them. And I mean, even though they end up playing later than they were scheduled to, I still missed them. But I mean, we played at 1:30 in the afternoon. That's early, so they played really early. But so it was a shame I didn't get to see them. But it was great to catch up with him in another part of the world. If you want to check out his main project, I would assume it's his main project, but it's the band that I've known about for so many years and I've always associated Lewis with is the Furor. So you can go and check the Furor out. Same deal at Bandcamp. So it's the Furor, the FUROR.bandcamp.com. You can find the Furor, Depravity, Nerve Cell, Impiety, all these bands over at Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, etc., etc. You can find all those resources. But as I said, they're all over at andysocial.net or andydowling.net. So go there if you're too busy or lazy to take down notes right now. You can go over there, and I've noted them all out for you. But one thing I must stress, and I always stress about it, and I'm a bit of a broken record, but make sure if you did enjoy listening to what Lewis had to say, or there's something interesting that you want to find out a little bit more about, please send him a message. Reach out to him. Let him know what you thought about the conversation and anything that he said. Him and everybody else that I've had on the podcast take time out of their days, and they're all busy people, to have a chat. And it means a lot to me, and hopefully it means a lot to you guys that get to listen in as well. So please, even if it's a quick hello and thank you, that goes a long way. So I appreciate that. All right, we're going to wrap this up very quickly. More episodes coming in the weeks to come. I'm playing a little bit behind the 8 ball. I was hoping to get some podcasts done in Indonesia at Hammersonic, but I can't remember if I mentioned this at the intro of the podcast, but I decided not to record anything over there, but I've got a bunch of people that I will have teed up for, I guess, some post-Hammersonic Festival conversations and whatnot. So we'll see how the coming weeks pan out, but lots of stuff coming, lots of cool guests, so stay tuned. If you want to support the podcast, get onto iTunes, rate and review. If you know somebody that's new to podcasts, or anybody that has an iPhone, especially one of the new iPhones, go and steal their phone and get that podcast app open. It'll already be on their phone, trust me, and download the Antisocial podcast. Just download a random episode or this one or whatever it is, and get them into podcasts, even if it's not just mine, but a few other great podcasts out there. I think I need another beer. It would mean a lot, and I think we need more people listening as well, so that'd be really cool. You can share the YouTube links, you can go onto Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those sort of things, like, retweet, share, comment, tag, all that social media love goes a long way to expose the podcast to more and more people. Heaps of guests coming up, lots of exciting things, not just music, a bit of everything. I want to learn more. I hope that you learn more too. Let's become better people. Until next week, catch up.